You can listen to this lecture with live interpretation into English, or you can listen to it in Spanish.
Va a haber interpretación al inglés o la pueden escuchar en español. Al norte de Veracruz, de Buenos Aires, en el delta del río Paraná, lleno de humedales, y lo van a ver posiblemente en su presentación. Y yo he aprendido que en su página web, el Valle del Río Paraná se compara frecuentemente al río Mississippi y tiene una función semejante en el continente sudamericano, y que ese valle también tiene una preocupación por el proyecto que está fomentando Alejandro. Es inmenso y toma una tercera parte del territorio de Estados Unidos. Así que Alejandro fundó un centro cultural que se llama Casa Río, River House, y de allí conecta a varios grupos de activistas, arquitectos, educadores, abogados, y todos ellos trabajan en proyectos con el propósito de elaborar políticas que protejan estos ambientes tan hermosos que tuve el privilegio de ver en 2014 cuando viajé allá. Y uno de los productos o de los proyectos que emergieron en este trabajo de Casa Río, es Territories in Collaboration, o Land in Collaboration. Tal vez Alejandro me corregirá, pero este proyecto tiene como fin elaborar una nueva pedagogía que muy interesantemente está basada en la experiencia soviética de ecosistemas, algo que la educación académica ha olvidado de afirmar. Y en el título de la charla de Alejandro, en su descripción, hay una palabra que me ha emocionado mucho durante bastante tiempo, que es la transdisciplinariedad, que significa enfocarse precisamente en la vida y en los problemas reales del mundo que nos rodea, usando herramientas que vienen de diferentes campos de experiencia, expertise. Así que me emociona mucho ver cómo va a hablar Alejandro de este proyecto, de estos contextos. Y sin más, le paso el micrófono. Bienvenido, Alejandro.
Muchísimas gracias por la presentación, Cata. Muchísimas gracias, Sara. Estoy muy conmovido realmente de volver a conversar con ustedes en Madison. Ya lo hice unos 4 años atrás.
I did it 4 years ago, and this moment is a very special one, because we are taking again certain ties, certain kind of presence after this great pandemic that has left so many traces. As Kata was saying, I work with a collective that is called Casa Río Lab, which is in the Rio de la Plata, River Plate basin. And as she said, it's about 1/3 of the territory of the United States. It involves a great basin, part of Brazil, all of Paraguay, Bolivia, Argentina, and Uruguay. So these 5 countries share part of their land in this very large area. I'm going to show you and share my screen with you so you can see this information and to have a better idea of where I am and what I'm talking about. I hope you can see, as Cata said, I'm working in Casa Río, which is a place to experiment, a laboratory for land research, which works specifically on this area. And if you can see this, Alejandro, no veo la pantalla todavía que estás, Alejandro. So what I was saying is that my work is developed in this area of the River Plate Basin. And the basin actually, it's the end of this great basin, and this is where Casa Río is placed. It's a land research project. It's a transdisciplinary approach with direct connection to local communities in the estuary, but also our work goes through the central valley of the basin. Our work team is diverse. As Cata said, there's lawyers. I am an artist and a lawyer. Brian Holmes is a critic and activist. She's an artist and teacher. Graciela, Dani Lorenzo, many others, programmers, biologists. It's a diverse team that comes from our previous experience working in the Ala Plástica artistic collective, art collective that had been working for 24 years in this basin area with research practices and artistic methods, and with the idea of walking as an aesthetic practice, as Francisco Carreri explaining worldscapes. This has been moving around, finding people and communities. And in the last years, we have started to work with a larger group. We've begun to share land research with other organizations of this great region. So what you can see now is one of the elements that we use now to share our work, which is the geographic information systems, cartography or maps, which has a peculiar aspect because it doesn't only work with through programming to with geographic information systems, and also with land analysis and space analysis, but also we apply it to the knowledge that communities have of their territory, beginning with this research. We are developing several workshops to enable local communities to use these systems that are usually in the hands of technical departments or university spaces or corporate spaces, but usually communities do not have access to these important tools. As I was saying, so it's a large group of collaborators that are working within an international problem, which is watersheds without borders. And we share information and geopolitical analysis of this river plate basin with organizations from Brazil, Uruguay, Argentina, Paraguay, Bolivia, and also from the Netherlands. This is a program that is aimed at the Central Valley of the River Plate Basin, which you can see here. This is the Central Valley. And here we see the wetlands corridor that is the largest on the planet, from the Pantanal area in Brazil to the River Plate estuary. This geographical and biological unit and historical unit that has been separated in the last 2 centuries because of different processes of division of borders by the states, the countries. And in this situation that is very grave and very extreme, our great River Plate Basin is compared to the Mississippi Basin, but also with extractive processes in the River Plate Basin. These processes have had great impact in the last 30 or 40 years. And the expansion of the agricultural border frontier for using the territory of the river basin to introduce transgenic grains, especially soy, has created great displacements and great social tension. Let's remember, this is the extractivist vision of this territory. In the last 2 years, the amount of exported commodities through the basin has been greater and economically than the commodities imported through the Mississippi basin. So this has had great impact on our territory in the last 20 years and has created an expansion of capital in these territories that never seen before. So this expansion of capital has not been reflected in a betterment of regional economies, even less, or rather there's been an economic or political destabilization process so that many organizations, artistic and scientific and political organizations, have seen the need to do a geopolitical analysis of the basin. And this is what we are working on together with other organizations, universities, and groups within this territory. To give an idea of this violent eruption in the last 20 years of the expansion of the agricultural areas, in the wet pampa, we have the occupation of soils, especially for transgenic soy, which has been greater than anything known up to then. Not only the eruption of this type of production has had great impact on the soils because of its expansion, but also we have greater pollution, growing pollution, displacement of communities that are now part of the slum areas of large cities. And this is a production that concentrates the value of US $50 billion, larger than the gross domestic product of many nations in this area. And now with over 46 million hectares, they are growing transgenic soy, with which is fumigated with glyphosates and creating deforestation of 500,000 hectares per year, I think. So I want you to see sorry, the connection is a little slow. This level of deforestation has not been known before in our territory. The advance of corporatist interest in our region has created greater imbalance in our region. And the communities and the groups and the artistic collectives are focusing on this situation. Here, we have the expansion during the last 20 years of the transgenic grain production and deforestation. This is a very large territory. Maybe in the United States, extractive processes took place during many years, and you have settled and redistributed wealth, but not in our land. Poverty is greater, and today more than 40% of the inhabitants of Argentina, which was one of the greatest countries with gross domestic product in Latin America, now has been a great increase of poverty. And this is a situation that deserves an analysis and study, because the basin has become a great problem that we cannot ignore. And this analysis of the basin shows us the need to create a model different than extractivism, models of biocultural integration. So these are the fires detected by NASA in 2020 from 13 to 20 June 2020. These are all the fires because of the need of expansion of the agricultural frontier, which, as I said, is an immense territory. And a few of these questions are analyzed when we're speaking about climate change, but we have to be aware that besides questions that we are accustomed to when we talk about poverty in Latin America, we have situations that compromise the whole of humanity, such as climate change. We are seeing deforestation on a very large scale, millions of hectares every year. And so these are also lands with forests, with jungles, with life, human life and natural life. Vis-a-vis this reality, our objective, working as a network with many organizations, and with a greater commitment of territorial organizations and with greater understanding of people living here, we are developing a strategy in contact with this network that we call biocultural corridors. The biocultural territories against the cultural fragmentation, bio-territorial fragmentation. So we have confronting other types of integration that is not only infrastructure integration. We have, in the last year, we have developed information about integration of infrastructure to make land exploitation easier with roads, and this is the Latin American regional infrastructure. So vis-a-vis these processes of integration of the infrastructure for extractivism, our societies, our communities at different levels, we are looking at other alternatives of integration to consolidate participation with a supplementary and integration, biocultural integration. Beginning with this logic, there's a biocultural corridor, which is given geographical space with urban, peri-urban, and rural spaces that protects the natural and cultural heritage, material and cultural, to keep healthy interconnected space and the connection of protected areas, even including in the future, including productive, responsible and sustainable processes. This is the integration of diverse processes, looking at it complementarily, looking at different types of spatial organization. So now we're going to see there are some initiatives of biocultural re-landscaping. As Boaventura de Souza says, to create a new space, a new territory. And now our work is centered on identifying work areas that has to do with this integration. And usually the market makes us believe that the only way to create integration is through consumption, through the consolidation of capital bets. And we are supporting other types of integration, of creating territory again, not alone, but as part of a very large network in territories that involve these elements. The organizations that participate as an artistic, environmental organization, we are using different tools. I'm going to try to move this a little bit. And I would like to share a small video. This is an experience from 2018-19, which is territories in collaboration and pedagogies of the flooding, of the flooded, which has previous work of consolidation of the work in this bioregional aspect, and this experience that I'm going to share was interrupted because of the pandemic, but we've recovered some months ago in so far as land work on the land. So I'm going to share this small video with subtitles, so I think it will have no problem.
Biocultural del tramo final de la Cuenca del Plata, desde el bajo delta del río Paraná hasta la franja costera sur del estuario.
Well, what we saw here was this activity from 2018 to 2019 through campaigns in this territory. And maybe something I need to emphasize is that we have campaigns, several campaigns. We're in contact with community groups. What happened is that another video was starting and I did not realize it. So what I was saying is that we had several campaigns to link these campaigns, and they are linked. We are emerging groups in the communities. We have no therapeutic vocation going down to the communities, because that's a problem we find with these artistic practices that come from very specialized spaces. And in a region, they say, we went down to the community to bring this practice. So this idea that the artist works from the top with groups in the community. In our case, we're always people from the community that use these tools to do this work of sensitivity, a heuristic approach. So conventional organizations also have a goal, a teleological approach, and they apply predetermined solutions that they apply. So the knowledge they have of these spaces in general is not a generative approach. So these collectives cannot interact in reciprocity and transform their agency. In our case, what we saw recently is that we try to link different artists and people who work intellectually with aesthetic creation, with grassroots organizations to create together conceptual and aesthetic initiatives, not only with artists, but also artists who go with community groups that create an aesthetic or conceptual initiative. But this is done in terms of negotiation. And that's what we saw recently in this video. And the proposals come out of a link and an analysis of the critical areas. This doesn't necessarily come out of a conversation, but sometimes we spend days, weeks, months with different types of negotiations. One of the things that we are interested in and that we work on usually is dealing with two questions that mobilize people when you work on territories. Who designs the territory, the space, and for whom are they designing this territory? So you can see these signs that go with us when we start a conversation. So who designs this territory and for whom is it being designed? And the third question that demands an answer from us what is participatory design of a territory. And here we start generating discussions about territorial sovereignty, creation of spaces, aesthetic proposals, and what art does and can do with communities, in communities. So this is despecialization, not specialization, but despecialization in these peripheral areas, which is very interesting for us. So the way to approach these territories is also through campaigns, which is through radio, mutant radio, which is a tool we have to move forward. It's an FM station that we use and that uses spaces that are not being used. In Casa Rio, we have a device for territorial democracy, and also in different variations, we show up with Radio Mutante, which also creates its own communication space with its workshops, presentations, and people go to the spaces where we install the radio, and we create special sociocultural spaces. We talk, we exchange, and let's take any case. It goes through this whole territory, river area, and then we bring the programs, and it's also shared in Europe. But basically it's for local broadcasts. So this is one of the programs, so you can see what it's doing. It's in a mountainous area. 90.7 mutant radio. So another initiative that allows us to move forward is the production of videos. We have an archive with territorial research, and we have a research laboratory, and all the places we go through and work with. So we have a communication proposal, and to have a registry, an archive of all, a file of all the material that we are producing, which is valued greatly and goes through different channels, private and TV. They're good quality videos that show what's happening in the coastal areas. This has no translation. Exhibits also. The land will not resist, will not hold, with Brian Holmes and other friends, Radian Griffith, Sarah Levison, Sarah Ross from the United States, and other organizations and people from our area. And the last one is publications. A little while ago, we had our book, The Land Will Not Resist. And we collaborated with organizations in the United States to make joint publications. And finally, we have something that we are very interested in, which is the maps, the cartography, that shared cartographies that we have developed in the last years related to exploring, that can be filled up by people who live in these lands. They're very simple. The work is very complex, but any person can be a map maker of their territory, of their land, as far as threats, sustainability exercises, perspectives, ideas, and interventions. In this very large territory, it's very gratifying to see how people are identifying their own proposals and their own observations. So this allows to move forward with interventions that are very efficient in real time. And this is how we can move forward with things that interest us, which is to generate legislative processes. There are two bills. One has also been already in the representative chamber for wetlands, and many thousands of people have worked on this proposal, and now we are working on a bill the Wetlands Bill that we're working on to protect these wetlands of the Central Valley of the River Plate Basin, and this is how I will end. Working with the National Congress and together with other organizations in this program. And this is the history of this Wetlands Bill. And the amount of people who have joined this petition is more than 500 organizations, more than 1 million signatures that are supporting this law, this bill. And in December next, we are going to have a feast, the biocultural feast of the River Plate Basin on 11th and the 12th of December to create the law of biocultural territories to recover the sovereignty of the grassroots. So this is some of the work we're doing. So you can exchange whatever you wish.